Welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm Joe Firestone. On August 16th, an article appeared in Truth Out entitled Far Right Authoritarianism. COVID deaths continue to surge in countries led by far right authoritarians. That was the title, of the article. That's certainly true to a certain degree. The article in Truth Out by Jack Delaney mentions the United States, and Brazil, and India, and Russia having experienced recent surges, in deaths, and having intensified the pandemic. The question, that I'm asking here is this a general trend? Is there a general trend, a very strong tendency for far-right authoritarian regimes to be accompanied by an excessive amount of deaths due to COVID-19? The question, is a very important question. Are right-wing authoritarian regimes essentially, are they death cults? Let's look at some statistics. Let me share the Worldometer site. And let us check things out. I've sorted this by deaths per million. You should be able to see my screen now, can you? Yes, you can. Let me give the whole screen over to this. I think you can still see it very well, and you can hear me. You should be able to hear me very well as well. So, numbers 1 and 4, San Marino, Andorra, are very, very small countries, and I don't think one can draw any conclusions from them. So for purposes of this, we're just going to exclude them from consideration. Excluding them, the number 1 country in the world, is Belgium, which, while having only 5 fatalities just yesterday, has had 858 deaths per million, because when COVID-19 first began to spread, Belgium was a very hot spot, and the government was not able to jump on things fast enough. To be fair, in recent days, there have been very few fatalities in Belgium for some time. In other words, they've been at the level of 850 and just a little more for months now, actually. There hasn't been any increase. On the other hand, Peru, which is a country with a right-wing regime, has been a hotbed of deaths from COVID, still increasing very rapidly in Peru, and now at 800 deaths per million. That's advancing fast enough that they're threatening to take over the top spot. You see Spain at 613. Spain is not an authoritarian country. They had some failures in handling COVID at the start, but they've done pretty well, adjusting in recent months. And we don't see fast increases there any longer. given the population of almost 47 million people. So deaths have spiked a little recently, but they're still not increasing, at a very rapid rate. Same is true, in the UK, where deaths per million are a little less than in Spain. They're at 609. The same is true with respect to Italy. Sweden recently has slowed down with respect to increasing deaths. They've been in the 570s for some time now. And over the last, let's say, 3 weeks, I believe it's been, they've only gone up from roughly 570 to 573. So they have not been increasing rapidly. Chile, on the other hand, has been increasing very rapidly. Very rapidly. Chile has a rightist, authoritarian government. It's not a government by the military yet, but the regime is rightist and authoritarian there. And then we have, of course, Donald Trump in our own country at 527 per million, and Brazil, with Bolsonaro right behind at 512 per million. Chile and the United States, and Brazil have all been increasing very rapidly. If you've been watching me over the last 2 weeks or so, this margin of 24 deaths per million, with respect to Brazil over the United States, has been pretty constant now for the last 2 weeks. And of the United States over Brazil, well, Brazil's been catching up, actually. It's only 15 now. But it's been starting to catch up to the United States. But the United States is increasing very rapidly as well. This figure of 887 new deaths that you see for the United States, it's still only 5 o'clock. Before the day is over, you will see changes to that figure. It will likely go over 1,000 deaths again. It may already have gone over 1,000 deaths. Let me check it out. Oh, it's still at 887. Let me just briefly check it out. See if it's gone up since the last time I got a reading. This is updated in real time once it starts updating. I missed the table. It's probably above this. There it is once again. Okay. Yeah, the U.S. has gone up to 1,053. Because, it's later in the day. It will probably be even higher than that, by the end of the day. You'll see total deaths are approaching 175,000 now in the U.S. And deaths per million are now at 528, in the United States. Let me continue to go down here. You see France at 466. That's not going up fast. The dying in France has practically stopped now. So we get to Mexico. That's 442. Of course, the president, of Mexico is a lefty for Mexico, but there's a lot of things he's not been able to reform there. So they're getting the kind, of neoliberal ideology that prioritizes keeping the economy open and just having people cope with the virus as well as they can. Still, it's not a right-wing authoritarian regime, so that's an exception. Panama has a regime which is fairly rightist. That's at 414 right now. St. Martin is another very small country. We cannot draw conclusions from that. Okay, the Netherlands is at 360. It's been that way for some time at roughly that particular level. It's not going up fast anymore. The same thing with Ireland. However, Bolivia is rapidly increasing. It is at 353 now. It will soon surpass Ireland, okay, and also the Netherlands, and it will probably be approaching the Panamanian level before too long. The same is true, okay, for Ecuador, which again famously has a regime which is rightist at this point in time. Colombia, the same deal. Colombia is not actually doing well. So there is a pattern where right-wing authoritarian regimes are not doing well in deaths per million. On the other hand, when we look at India and we look, okay, at Russia, and remember the hypothesis is here is that right-wing authoritarians are prioritizing keeping the economy open and putting the interests of business people, but putting those interests, okay, ahead of the health of people living in their country, and pretty much allowing the poor in their countries to fend for themselves. Okay, and India has been tarred with this particular brush, and Russia as well. Now, we don't know about the reliability of the statistical system, okay, in Russia. Of late, we have seen very appreciable surges in the death rate, but Russia is still only at 109 deaths per capita. That's only about 1/5 the level of the United States. Of course, Russia is now something like 45% of the size of the United States in population. When we get to India, we must again question the internal statistics, the accuracy of the internal statistics there, because the right-wing government is probably trying to distort those. But then why allow the recent reporting of very appreciable death statistics, like the new deaths today reported by India were 1,000 at 98. But still, deaths per million, okay, in India is only at 38 deaths per million. So I don't know how to explain that by the hypothesis that there's a systematic relationship between authoritarian regimes that are neoliberal or right-wing, okay, in ideology, okay, and poor performance when it comes to COVID-19. Now, I don't know if deaths per million at 38, okay, is accurate, but let's say it's off by a magnitude of 10. That still leaves India as a much better performer than the United States. So I think there's something missing in the hypothesis that there's a necessary correlation between right-wing, okay, neoliberal regimes and poor performance. when it comes to COVID-19 fatalities. So, with all due respect, I think that hypothesis has to be refined somewhat and made more complex. It does not hold on a continuing basis, in my view. And so that's all I have to say for this progressive short take. I will see you again soon, but first, I'd like to display the promo again for you so you know where my Patreon account is. Thank you very much for coming. I'll see you again soon.